Hi everyone, it's Denise. Welcome back to Dobby Books. So, in this week, boy, I've had a crazy day. I've had a crazy weekend, as a matter of fact. I had to work 3 to 11 on Saturday, which um, went fairly well. But in the morning, earlier that morning, like I semi usually do, I opened my eyes at 3:30 and could not fall back to sleep. Ended up being up for a few hours, and because I like to have coffee when I wake up, I didn't have regular coffee. I had decaf, so I figured that was a good compromise. Had a little decaf, got some work done, some schoolwork, and then the sleepiness hit me, and I went and I took a nap. So I slept off and on for like the next hour or so, and then I got myself ready for work. And by the time 11 o'clock was nearing, I was feeling kind of dopey,. tired. So I drove home, and the usual night prep routine was cut really, really short. I brushed my teeth and went to bed. I was tired. It was a little after midnight. And I had to get up at 5:30 the next morning because I was covering a shift, a 7 to 3 shift. And that got a little rough at around 1 o'clock. Excuse me. That got a little rough around 1 o'clock. But I made it. I pulled through. It was 3 o'clock. I had to run one errand. Not that I had to, right? But I did anyway. Let me move this microphone since she's here. But anyways, I got home 5-ish. Same thing. Was just crazy tired. Brushed my teeth, went to sleep. Just the nighttime routine was just cut short. I slept for 3 hours and couldn't fall back to sleep. I hate it when this happens. Oh my gosh. No one told me this would happen when you get older. Really. I thought it was just my mom's problem. And I couldn't go back to sleep. So I ended up getting up, doing the same thing, having a cup of decaf, came back to my library, read through a couple of books, and then I started to feel sleepy again. So I went back to bed. And I had a doctor's appointment today on Monday at 10:30 in the morning. But what had happened is just before I went to sleep, I had turned down the volume on my phone so as not to wake up my husband, because I needed to see something really quick, and then I was going to go to sleep. And in trying to put the phone back on my nightstand, it dropped on the floor. I was too tired to care. I just went back to sleep. And I don't know what helped me to wake up when I did, but it was 9 when I woke up. And my appointment was at least, I think something like 40 minutes away. I didn't know what traffic would be like on a Monday morning. I flew. I mean, I showered, I dressed, I did minimal for the face, pulled back the hair, and I was out the door. I can't believe I made that appointment in time. I couldn't find parking. I had to go up on this hill, beyond where the doctor's building was, and then walk all the way down this hill, cross over to the parking lot. It's just, but I made it. Checked in, and within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they called my name. Everything went smooth as everything, and the very thing that I had been trying to get addressed over the last several years has been addressed, and now I've been scheduled for surgery. So in spite of all that craziness and the fatigue, it's been a good day. So I just got back now. I made a stop over at Barnes & Noble because I was hungry, and I said, well, let me have some quiche, a little coffee, chill out a little bit, head home. But we all know what happens when you go to have quiche at Barnes & Noble. But anyway, I'm going to show you some items that I got this week, and then what I'm currently reading, including some ebooks and an audiobook I'm listening to. And I hope I get the name right. So here we go. So this is Lily. She's come to join me because she doesn't want to sit down in her little, say hi, Dee Dee. Oh, Dee Dee. All right, I'm going to put her over here. Let's see if she's content. All right, so what I'm currently reading, I'm still working my way through let's take off the doohickeys, the Houses of History. We're almost done, look. Almost done. We will be reading oral history. And I did do my first run through on that chapter, and it's very interesting how oral history has come to be better appreciated among historians as just as viable as written history, and the nuances of oral history and they discuss that. So I think it's very interesting. A lot of the modern day history that we are reading now, that that's written now, incorporates a lot of that oral history, and it crosses over into like ethnohistory, cultural history. Just it very fascinating to me because I enjoy history. So almost done with this. Next one. And yes, I did find a topic for my essay, and I will be focusing on the secularization of Britain because I'm currently working on that in my capstone research about Philip Pullman. And I've encountered this very interesting history about Britain's secularization. So that is what I'm doing my history essay on. All right, next thing I am reading, Fangirl by Rowell. Now listen, Fangirl talks about something that I knew nothing about until I read this book, and it's something called fan fiction. Now, I didn't know what that was. If you guys don't know what it is, fan fiction is when you have fans of a particular book series. So let's say it's the Harry Potter series, right? And there is actually a fan group about this. And what these fans do is they continue the story. So they start writing their own additional chapters, giving it alternative endings, extra episodes. And these are just fans writing these stories. So this book, Fangirl, is about just one of those fans who is into a series that's entitled Simon Snow. It's a Simon Snow series. And it's very similar to like the Harry Potter series, where this young man goes to a school for magicians and whatever, and his experiences there. And the protagonist of the story, Kathy, she's like a 5,000 person following for her writings that she posts on this website for the Simon Snow series. So she's very well known. She's very much admired within this group. And she and her twin sister, I forgot her twin sister's name. It's right at the tip of my tongue. But anyways, she and her twin sister have started college. Her sister is doing fantastic. Her sister has kind of broken off with Kathy. She wants to have her own life. She wants to have her own identity. She's just going to parties, making new friends. And Kathy, this is such a change for her because she and her sister had always shared the same room and the same closet, and they would talk at night, and they were so close. This is such a culture shock for Kathy. Now she's in a room, and her roommate is this girl, Rachel, who is just, she's not like a warm, fuzzy person. So Kathy, who already has some social insecurities, just does her best to deal with this, and she tries to stay away when Rachel's in the same room with her, that sort of thing. And she, in her writing class, she was able to get herself into a 300 level writing class as a freshman because of her writing skills. But she's encountering some problems with her teacher, who doesn't understand fan fiction. So when Kathy submits a work, which is a Simon Snow chapter, the teacher accuses her of plagiarism. Hold on a second, I'm going to let the doggy out. And obviously her teacher is unaware of this fan fiction group that exists online. So this creates a problem for Kathy, and it really causes her to struggle more with insecurities. It's interesting that Kathy, she's been at the school for a month, and she's never gone to the cafeteria, the dining area, because she doesn't know where it's at. She hasn't even looked for it. And the reason she doesn't want to go in there is because she doesn't want to walk in alone with all those people in there, and she won't know where to stand in line or where to sit down to eat. And this causes her a level of anxiety that she just doesn't want to deal with. So she's been eating her protein bars that she has in boxes in her room and just sustaining herself with that and some peanut butter. So Kathy obviously has some socialization issues, and it's just interesting. So far, what I have found about this is the discovery of fan fiction groups. So I'm loving learning about this new, I guess, a genre within a genre, a subgenre of this. It's very interesting. This is YA. We're reading this for the class. And I love how I'm getting introduced to these new experiences. I think they're very interesting. And two of my classmates were talking about the same website of Harry Potter fans who were submitting their own creative work for the Harry Potter series, and now I want to look into it and read it. So this is really neat. This is a good book, and this, like I had shown last week, this is the manga version, volume 1 of this novel, and there are 4 manga volumes that go to this book. So I've just got the one for now. But I'm enjoying this, Fangirl, by Rainbow Rowell, or Rainbow Rowell, however you want to pronounce that. The next one that I'm reading is, of course, a continuation of my buddy read, I guess you could say, with Marilyn Maya Mendoza, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. This has been my lifetime favorite book, which I first encountered when I was a young girl, and I read it every few years again. And right now I am in book 2 and chapter 10. We've gotten introduced to Francie and Neely, and they are brother and sister. Their mother, Katie, and their father, Johnny. And, of course, her aunts and her grandparents on her mother's side. So now we have a good introduction of the family, a little background about how her parents met and how everything came to be where they're at right now in life. Of course, I know the entire story. This is just, it really is such a lovely book, and it became so popular at the time of its publication that there were editions of this printed so that servicemen could carry it with them and read it. And Betty Smith, it's a biographical but not biographical book, but a lot of her own life is reflected in the characters and the experiences that you will read about in this book. It's a lovely book, and I'm enjoying. I always enjoy reading through this all over again. So, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. And the next one that I will be rereading is Doll Bones by Holly Black. This is a Newbery Honor Medal winner. And this I am reading again for my YA class. It's the final book that we'll be reading. We're given a choice between young readers, like middle grade books, and YA. And I chose middle grade because I owned more of those books than I did the YA books. Doll Bones I loved very much because it has a paranormal twist to it, a paranormal theme to it, we should say. And basic background on Doll Bones, she acquires this particular doll and learns through a series of circumstances that this doll is sort of communicating with her and telling her to bring her back to a specific location. So our young protagonist takes some risks at her young age, so we're thinking middle grade, of getting on a bus by herself, traveling to a town she hasn't been to before, so she can bring this doll and lay it to rest where its original owner wants her to be. Very interesting story, an adventurous story. I thoroughly loved it. I'm going to be rereading it, and I guess it's going to be part of a final project or essay in the YA class. Now, another book that let me see, is there another book? Yes, I am still reading in my Kobo. So in my Kobo, I have a few books that I'm kind of meandering my way through. I'm continuing to read the book by Mary Beard entitled Confronting the Classics, and this is something that I'm continuing to squeeze in between classes and other books that I have to read, and when I go to doctor's appointments, I continue to read this book. And this is Mary Beard talking about various authors that have written about Roman history, for example, or Greek history, and just sort of asking important questions and her analysis of those, etc. I'm finding it a very good read. I'll have more to say later when I'm done. And I'm also reading They Thought They Were Free, The Germans, 1933 to 1944 by Milton Mayer. And Milton Mayer had left Germany. He came back to Germany. He interviewed, and I believe it was more than 5 people. I don't know if it was 10 or 9. I don't remember. Interviewed people who lived in a specific town in Germany to find out from them what the process was that they went through becoming part of the support of the Third Reich, and how it slowly just took over their lives and what they came to believe. And now that the war was over and they're looking back, they're able to have a different point of view on that. They're able to reflect on it and how it happened, why it happened, etc. So, leading into that, I'm also listening to a series on the Great Courses. And I'm not going to remember the professor's name, but I will provide it for you. It's a comparison between capitalism and socialism. And this professor is just doing a wonderful job of going historically through the development and growth of both. He goes into the history of the United States and various countries in Europe. He spends a good amount of time on Russian history and talking about the economics and what the results were of various decisions of the Communist Party for Russia. And he goes into, now he's talking about, then he went into Germany. And you see the connections there when he talks about Germany and Marxism, because Marx was German. And he talks about what the economic situation had been in Germany, how the desperation of its economic situation sort of opened the door to allow Hitler to come to power. And then he goes into US history and he talks about its own growth into capitalism and the various notables who had their theories on economics, how the Dust Bowl happened, how the Depression happened. And it's very interesting as I'm listening to this series, how some of the things that happened to Germany, for instance, with their money and the tariffs and the following decisions that were made in order to try to patch up the mistake that was made from before, it's too close to home right now. It doesn't help with my anxiety. And I guess that's just the way it is. I'm going to read things and hear things and think, wow, this sounds kind of familiar, but I'd rather be aware than put my head in the sand. But it's a fascinating series from the Great Courses, and I'm an annual subscriber, so I get to listen to a zillion different things because I just don't have enough hours in the day to learn stuff. So I will post the cover of that particular course, and hopefully I can also supply a link to that particular course if you wanted to check it out. Things I have purchased. I finally got book 3 in the His Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman, The Amber Spyglass. This is the thickest of the 3. So I have finished listening to the audiobook. I don't really need to read this unless I go back to it. I have a good friend of mine who is one of the rare people in my life who loves and appreciates books as much as I do. So he is the one and only person that I know so far, unless I'm forgetting, who I can actually loan books to and know that I'll get them back and they'll be in the same beautiful condition they were in when I gave them to him in the first place. And he knows he can do the same with me. So this is something that I'll be loaning out to him. The next one that I got, now this is interesting. It's a book entitled The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler. But look at this book. It looks like an oversized Penguin Classics edition. Let me show you the size of a regular one. See the difference? And it's weird because on the cover, I don't know if I'll be able to see it. It's kind of blurry. It doesn't have the same level of clarity that you would find. And I thought maybe this is a large print edition, but when I open it up, it's not large print. It's just, regular print on a bigger page, of course, but it's not large print. And it doesn't even say anywhere on here large print edition or anything. And I began to wonder, is this some sort of bootlegged version of a Penguin Classics? I don't know. I tried to find the same name at Barnes and Noble, and they didn't have this particular one, so I really couldn't check it out. And I found this at the library that I often go to when I need to just bury myself in a quiet place to get my schoolwork done. And this is the one that has the little cafe and the used bookstore and the whole nine. It's $2. And finally, I decided to buy it. I had hesitated the first time because it looked like a bootlegged copy. And I thought, well, this doesn't look too honest. But who knows? I mean, even the back, this is not the way that the back of a Penguin Classics looks like. Here's the back of a regular Penguin Classics. Do you see? Other than the difference in the writing, it's just you don't see the white strip on this one, and the way that the paragraphs have been formatted on the back is different. Normally the top part is written in red like here. It's not on here. This reminds me of one of those books that are published by a smaller publishing house, you know, an independent publishing house. I'm going to read it, but I'm still very curious where this came from, you know. And The Way of All Flesh, it's sometimes called Ernest Pontifex or The Way of All Flesh, is a semi-autobiographical novel by Samuel Butler that attacks Victorian era hypocrisy. It was written between 1873 and 1884. It traces 4 generations of the Pontifex family. Butler dared not publish it during his lifetime. But when it was published in 1903, it was accepted as part of the general reaction against Victorianism. The title is a common misquotation of a biblical Hebrew expression to go the way of all the earth, meaning to die, and that's from 1 Kings 2:2. In 1998, the Modern Library ranked The Way of All Flesh 12th on its list of the 100 best English language novels of the 20th century. And in here, it mentions a little bio on Samuel Butler, born December 4th, 1835, in Langer Rectory, Nottinghamshire, England, died June 18th, 1902, London. English novelist, essayist, and critic whose satire, Erewhon in 1872, foreshadowed the collapse of the Victorian illusion of eternal progress. The Way of All Flesh, his autobiographical novel, is generally considered his masterpiece. And for this reason, when I read that description on the back of the book, I decided I really want to read this book. So the temptation was great. I couldn't find one that looked like a real Penguin Classic, so I bought the fake one. There we go. And here's the second one, is an actual Penguin Classic. This I got today. No, this one I ordered from Barnes and Noble to have it shipped, by William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience. And I found out about this book through my study of Philip Pullman. So William James is one of the authors that he has followed very much, and this was a title that Pullman mentioned. And of course, it's I'd gotten John Milton's book, and the other one, I showed it to you. I want to go ahead and continue with that. So this is, let me give you a little snippet. Standing at the crossroads of psychology and religion, this groundbreaking work applied the scientific method to humankind's religious behavior. William James believed individual religious experiences, rather than the precepts of organized religions, were the backbone of the world's spiritual life. His discussions of conversion, repentance, mysticism, and saintliness, and his observations on actual personal religious experiences all support this thesis. In his introduction, Martin E. Marty discusses how James's pluralistic view of religion led to his remarkable tolerance of extreme forms of religious behavior, his challenging, highly original theories, and his welcome lack of pretension in all of his observations on the individual and the divine. And this belief that William James had, that individual religious experiences were the backbone of the world's spiritual life, are exactly where Philip Pullman stands as well. And I can't really call it humanistic because humanists per se don't believe in a God, so there isn't really a religious experience or a spiritual experience. With William James, there is a spiritual side, obviously, but it's not up to the church as an institution to decide that for everybody else. So that is the stand of the belief of William James, and it's going to be very interesting to read further along in this, because I'll not only learn a lot about William James and where he stands, I will learn more about where Philip Pullman also stands. And it's interesting that Philip Pullman, although he doesn't believe in a God, he is still fascinated with religion. And when he writes, you can see he pulls from his own religious experience growing up, as that he had in childhood. He never had a negative experience in childhood. His grandfather, who was a vicar, was a wonderful man, and he has beautiful memories of him. So you see Pullman, it almost looks like a contradiction where he pulls in his Christian experience with his humanistic leanings. A very interesting combination. So William James, I think, is just my further getting to know, become more familiar with this sort of perspective. This next book that I got, it comes in 4 volumes. Okay, I have the other 2 volumes which I purchased at my library sale. One of them is, let me get one that's from the earliest. So the earliest one I have is The Age of Revolution, 1789 to 1848. And this is, it's covering European history. So the Age of Revolution, interpretation of the phenomena we now take for granted, the transformation of peasants into industrial laborers, the replacement of omnipotent monarchs by a triumphant middle class, the birth of new sciences, technologies, and ideologies, and the shockwaves that rippled outward from Europe to America, Asia, and Africa. I have this one. The next one in the series goes from (1848) to 1875. This is the 2nd volume. This is the one that I found today when I was at Barnes & Noble, The Age of Capital. This one, it mentions in the short time period 1848 to 1875, the world was conquered by a relatively small army composed not of soldiers or adventurers, but of sober men in sober clothes, spreading respectability and a faith in private enterprise, along with gasworks, railroad lines, and loans. This was the Age of Capital, which Eric Hobsbawm chronicles with awe-inspiring clarity and narrative energy in the 2nd volume of his monumental history of the making of the modern world. This is the one I got today, The Age of Capital. And the other book that I had that I purchased from my library sale is The Age of Empire, 1875 to 1914. And in this one, in this 3rd volume of his 4-volume History of the Modern World as it has been produced by the development and expansion of the West, Eric Hobsbawm combines vast erudition with a graceful prose style to recreate the epoch that laid the basis for the 20th century. It is addressed not to other academics, but to all who wish to understand the world and who believe history is important for this purpose. So now I have 3 of the 4 books. Let me see if I can hold them up in order. So, first one is The Age of Revolution. The 2nd, The Age of Capital. And the 3rd, The Age of Empire. So now all I need is the 4th book. And that one, it will be entitled what? I think the newer book is going to tell me that. The 4th book in the series is entitled The Age of Extremes, and it covers the years 1914 to 1991. So I am keeping an eye out I'm keeping an eye out for that at the library sale, of course, because that's only going to cost me $1. But if I don't find it, I might happen upon it at another bookstore that I'm at. So that's fantastic. I'm excited that my collection is just about finished. All right, so let me move this over. And today I just grabbed this book because I have the graphic novel, and I was surprised to discover when I was, putting this little collection together, I never got the original novel. So The Giver by Lois Lowry, a Newbery Medal winner. It's interesting how they put the Newbery medal on here. So it's actually printed on the book itself. It no longer looks like a separate medal was put on there, like this one, like with doll bones. It looks like a separate little medal was pasted onto the cover, whereas in this one, it's actually part of the cover itself. But the wording is a little different. It says, John Newbery Medal for the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. And I don't see that writing on the other medals. So now I have the Giver original novel and the Giver graphic novel, and that's important for me. And the reason I found that out is because last week in class, we were talking about the Fangirl series and how it was also in manga form as a graphic novel. And part of what was covered in class at that time was reading graphic novels and arguing whether it's a legitimate means of reading an actual genre that could be considered. And we just had this little discussion with the pros and the cons and the academic articles that we were reading regarding that. And I had brought up with my teacher that I had a collection of graphic novels, and many of those graphic novels were originally from novels, the original novels. And I asked her if she would be okay with me bringing in a few of the novels with graphic novels combinations to class so that they could see them. So she thought that was a great idea, and that's when I discovered that with the Giver I did not have. But it was really nice. I think I had about 14, if I count the novels with their graphic novels. There were 14 books that I brought into class that everyone had a chance to look through. And a lot of these are, the students in my class are teaching majors, and they're single subject teaching majors. So they're going to be dealing with middle school and young adult literature as teachers. So I thought this might be good for them to kind of see that some of the books that they may have to teach in their classes have another format to them, and maybe some students are willing to be introduced to a novel in that manner if they want to use both books in class, or if, let's say, I mean, obviously AP, you're going to have the original novel. Maybe you explore the different formats that original novel was published in. But I'm talking about the regular classes if you want them to have some exposure to some really great books that we have in the canon, even some modern contemporary, very well-written books or dealing with relevant topics, that you might want to present it to your class in the form of a graphic novel. First, they get their introduction to it, and then maybe you can introduce them to either all or part of the original novel, now that they have the basic storyline in mind. So that was that. And then I found something, this is like not even a book, it's a journal, looks like a journal. And because I'm studying Philip Pullman and we're dealing with all these different subjects, it caught my eye. I don't know if I've ever seen this magazine before, but let me read this because it's covering some interesting topics. It's called New Humanist, published by Humanists UK. This is the spring 2025 issue, and the title of it is The Fight Back Begins. Matthew D. Taylor on the prophets and televangelists guiding Trump. Bethany Elliott on surviving the age of the narcissist. Keith Kahn Harris on how to deal divides over anti-Semitism, and Nicola Kutcher on joy and grief in post-Assad Syria. Topics that, kind of interest me. So I'm going to be perusing through this publication and becoming familiar with it. And it was just an unexpected discovery that I had today, which is the neatest thing when you go to a bookstore and you find something new. You're like, oh, what is this? Otherwise, you may not have found out about it. So there's that. It's really neat. The pages are a smooth sort of page, but it has some texture to it. So almost like a book, but not quite a book. And it's not that shiny, smooth texture that a regular magazine would have. That's the difference in that. And the way that they have written it, it reminds me very much of what a regular book chapter would look like. And then you have I just like it. And the cover itself is not a flimsy magazine cover. It has some, what's the word, firmness to it. It's not floppy. It's closer to a paperback book cover, but not quite. Very interesting. It's sort of a hybrid of both a book and a magazine, which is another factor that intrigued me about this particular journal. Would this be a journal, periodical, publication? How's that? That's safe. And I believe that is it, everyone. That is all I have for now. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in just a few days. Bye bye.